More damning allegations are expected when the state capture inquiry resumes today. Former Bosasa COO Angelo Agrizzi last week told the Zondo Commission that some journalists were on the company's payroll. He also spilled the beans on how crucial evidence was destroyed and how some correctional services officials were allegedly bribed for contracts. Well, my partner Dan Moyane, live for us in Parktown where the inquiry is happening. Dan, a very good morning to you. And I'll be very interested to know, it's day 8 of Angelo Agrizzi, and he certainly has been one of the most, if not the most interesting person we've heard from at the state capture inquiry so far. You almost think it's a Bosasa inquiry over the past week or so. What's been the reaction? What are people saying? Do they believe him? Do they not believe him? Are they asking about the sort of motivation behind this? Why now? Are we still at that point where the question marks hang over him as a witness in particular?
Partner, good morning again. Well, I don't think people are actually questioning too much whether or not he's a credible witness or not, particularly last week, partner, when the commission took its time to corroborate some of the findings. These were findings of the SIU report into alleged corruption in Bosasa of 10 years ago, 2009. So the commission spent some time verifying, corroborating some of those findings that came out of an investigation by the SIU into Bosasa with Mr. Angelo Agrizzi, and he confirmed a lot of that information. So you had the SIU a decade ago investigating Bosasa and finding damning allegations there, proving some serious allegations of corruption and being corroborated by this witness, Angelo Agrizzi. Overall, people I've been talking to and seeing on social media and other commentators, people are saying this is shocking. What's coming out here is really shocking. Partner, for example, just on the SIU report, the type of corruption and bribery that Mr. Angelo Agrizzi alleges happened with Bosasa, with state officials in correctional services as an example, was so brazen in nature from what is coming out. And yet, after an official investigation by an institution like the SIU into Bosasa, nothing has been done. For 10 years, that report has been gathering dust on the shelves. And that's one of the things that people are saying, will there be consequences, therefore, out of this commission of inquiry? There was an official SIU investigation a decade ago. Nothing has been done with it. The NPA never prosecuted anybody. Today, we're sitting here, day 8 of Mr. Angelo Agrizzi, set to hear more damning revelations of the alleged bribery and corruption, and nothing was done. So will there be consequences is one of the questions that many people are asking. Now, I have with me Mr. Sandile Swanehe again from the Vet School of Governance at this hour, partner, and he has some interesting views that he's been sharing with us regarding this SIU report and the whole question of whether or not there will be action that will be taken. Now, let's look back, Mr. Swane, to at the time of 2009, very briefly. At that time, in 2009, a report was done into SIU, into Bosasa, about these alleged activities of alleged corrupt activities that dated back when President Thabo Mbeki was still president. How should we read all of this?
Firstly, I think we're now at a historic moment for the African National Congress and the people of South Africa as a whole. This is historic. The corruption that actually took place at Bosasa took place under the presidency of Thabo Mbeki. The deeds were done. The cover-up took place under President Zuma. Both of these presidents did something. Thabo Mbeki issued the first authority to investigate to the SIU. Zuma authorized this commission where we are in January 2018. So this thing is almost going 20 years, actually, when you look at it. Because when you conclude an investigation in 2009, it means you are concluding an investigation on things that have been happening over a long period of time.
In Polokwane in 2007, the then Secretary General of the ANC was outgoing, Kgalema Motlanthe, spoke about how deep the rot was. That was 2007. So the African National Congress was aware as far back as 12 years ago almost of the seriousness of corruption involving state officials. And Bosasa just being one shining example, if one can say that, of corruption.
Yes, that is true. You will remember actually that President Mandela himself, he counted several billions of fraud that were happening under his presidency, and he called for the RDP of the soul.
So should we be shocked, therefore, when we are listening to Angelo Agrizzi telling us about Bosasa, if the allegations of bribery and corruption go way back to Madiba's 10?
No, this is not shocking. I think what people are concerned about is the regularity. When you have a company that is committing crime every month, for instance, if you are paying people 100,000 each every month for this type of period, Bosasa is not out of business. Bosasa has not been stopped and taken out of business.
Though they've changed the name, they are now Africa Global Operations.
Yes, they've just changed the name. They've not been blacklisted. I have not received any notification. I'm not aware of any notification that they've been. So we don't know what they are doing now, and they are not the only ones.
But there was a call in the past to blacklist Bosasa. And from what we've seen last week, what we heard, and the reports we've seen in other media over the weekend, there were attempts clearly to block their blacklisting.
Yes, Kenneth Brown, who is working for Standard Bank now, was eventually removed. He was the chief procurement officer who actually was pursuing this matter of the blacklisting of Bosasa. Kenneth Brown said the state is wasting and overpaying at least about 40% on its tenders. 40% is getting wasted. So we have not yet heard from the economists about the economic implications and the financial implications of this corruption.
Now, from a governance perspective, we're having elections coming up round about May. This past weekend, we saw the IEC's last voter registration campaign across the country. If I were the African National Congress, from a governance perspective, and historically, I've not been seen to be acting firmly against corruption. And even when there was an SIU report, which was mandated by President Thabo Mbeki, and it came out clearly about action that needed to be taken, and nothing was done, I'll be worried about my prospects at the polls.
I think that overall, statisticians and other people are predicting that the ANC will still remain in power, one way or the other. What we do not know is the extent to which they will retain power. The middle class, the intellectual classes, the intelligentsia, are questioning the ANC very, very seriously right now, very seriously, and that is where the problems are starting. Over the next 10 years, the ANC is going to be under extreme pressure.
Okay, under extreme pressure indeed. That's Mr. Swane, their partner from the West School of Governance. Well, while the ANC is going to have to see how it really manages this situation that's very clearly coming out, painting this picture of long-term allegations of bribery and corruption that have affected state officials. Now, Bosasa being that so-called shining example, as I'm saying, of that bribery and allegation and the depth of the rope. It's going to be very interesting to see. And partner, as we know, this past weekend we had reports that there were attempts from Bosasa to shut up Mr. Agrizzi, so he can't comment, he can't give evidence here. Allegations of emails being sent offering him up to 80 million rand to keep quiet. Well, we are waiting to see whether or not there'll be more light shed here today when he resumes day 8, of course, of his testimony at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture.
All right, thanks very much. That's my partner Dan Moyane out in Parktown.